I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. Today I've got Simon Hartley, and we're going to be talking about his book, or one of his books, Motivation is Pear-Shaped. Simon, where can people find you?
I prefer the best way to connect with people is via LinkedIn, so that we can actually connect,
right,
have a conversation.
So, Simon, I've read this. Really, I love a book based on data, not opinion. But first and foremost, before we talk about it, why don't you give us a little bit about your background? Because you've got a really interesting background, haven't you?
So my background, I describe it, is sports psychology.
Yeah.
That's where I started and worked probably for the first just over 10 years, purely working with athletes and sports teams, helping them to get the stuff between their ears right. But since then, I've taken what I call sports psychology out into the world, into business, education, healthcare, and all sorts. But I've also extended probably my own studies, and my own curiosity has taken me beyond sport to look at how the best in the world operate, how they think differently, how they behave differently, how they make different choices, how they perceive the world differently, how they create world-class teams and organizations and cultures. So that's really where my curiosity has taken me, and I now help other people adopt those principles.
So it's about how you work with elite, high performance athletes, and it's how can we take that and actually move that into business. Absolutely.
And one of the lessons I learned years and years ago is that sports psychology is the wrong term. This is human psychology. I might have learned it through working with athletes, but it doesn't stop. The principles don't stop as you leave a dressing room or a sporting environment. They are the same principles that apply in any walk of life.
So just to say, Andrew's saying good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Andrew.
This is your 12th book, isn't it?
It is, yes. Yeah.
When I was doing the show card, I was reading up on you, and I was 12 books. So talk us through the inspiration behind this.
The inspiration is very simple. I have asked a question for many, many years, probably 15 or so years, consistently asking the same question: why do you come here and do this stuff with us? And it's a subtly different question than why do you come to work? Because if you ask why do you come to work, most people will say, I need to get paid. There's a roof that we need to keep over our heads and kids we need to feed and all those sorts of things. But if you then ask, why do you come here though and do this stuff with us? Then you start to get some different answers. And it took me a long, long time to realize that actually there weren't hundreds of different answers. I mean, if you just take each individual answer and look at them on merit, they all look different. Some people will say, I come here because I enjoy the team, or what we do is important, or I need to get paid, or I like luxuries, or whatever it happens to be. But when you distill it down, actually there are 4 really kind of key principles behind it all, 4 categories that all of these fall into. And it's when I understood that I started to figure out that motivation was pear-shaped. And having understood it probably a couple of years ago, I then worked with some clients using those principles, putting them into action. And once I'd started to see that there were results coming back and that they could consistently motivate their people, I thought, right, now I need to write this down, put a cover on it, and share it more widely.
Because for those that don't know, I live in London, and I live very close to the River Thames. I'm not a rower, but my partner is, and she used to be a cox as well. So because I live near the River Thames, there's a lot of rowers around here. And to be an elite rower, you need to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you need to be rowing on a very cold River Thames at 5 o'clock in the morning in November. Why would you do that?
It's a great question. I've asked the same of swimmers who get up at stupid o'clock in the morning, every morning, dive into chlorinated water, charge up and down, and they do it day after day after day for weeks on end, year after year. And there has to be a good answer to that question. And it's when you start digging into the answer to that question and getting beyond the headlines, you start to understand really what it's all about. And interestingly, I had a conversation with a swimmer, and I basically asked the same thing. Why do you do this? Why do you get up at stupid o'clock in the morning every morning? And the headline answer was to win the gold medal.
Yeah.
And I
You
responded,
cover this in the book, don't you?
yeah. And I responded by saying, is it really about a gold medal? He said, yes. I said, brilliant. I'm going to nip down to the trophy shop and buy you one. And he went, no, that's not really what it's all about. And then we started getting into, what does the gold medal mean? And he said, well, it means I'm the best. Well, no, it doesn't really. And it's not all about being the best. It's about being my best. Yeah. It's about achieving my potential. Absolutely. It's about, in his words, finishing my swimming career, looking back and saying no regrets. I gave it everything. And I can be really happy with that. Interestingly, since he retired from swimming, competitive swimming, he now does exactly the same thing through his businesses. So he's still trying to achieve his potential, realize his potential. So that tells us really what it's all about. I've met lots of athletes over the years, asked the same sorts of questions. Some of them have said, I'm really passionate about this sport. I really love this sport. And one of them, who's a triathlete, I said, what will you do when you finish being a competitive triathlete and nobody's going to pay you anymore for being on the GB team or anything like that? And he said, well, I'm going to cycle up in the hills, I'm going to run, and I'm going to swim.
Yes.
And that's exactly what he will do when he retires, because he just loves this stuff. And at the moment, somebody's paying him to do it, and they'll hang medals around his neck when he wins. And one day he'll be too old for all of that stuff, but it won't stop him from doing it.
Yeah.
Because he's really passionate. But actually, the number of athletes and sports people that I've come across who are genuinely still passionate about what they do is quite small. They started loving it when they were 6, 7, 8 years old, but there was a point in time where the agenda changed, their motivation changed. Then they may have become more motivated by winning than they were by doing the thing. And actually, you can see how their motivation shifts from sort of enjoyment and passion towards winning and achievement, or maybe even for some of them, reward and results, because actually it pays really well. And that's the bit that I really like now. So we can almost like see these elements of PEAR reflected in people's lives. And one of the other interesting things I've found is that that's not just true of athletes. I've talked to people at all through, different stages of their careers who may at some point in time be driven by the need for money and recognition and reward. But often when they get towards the end of their careers and they've been really well paid for quite a long time and they've got enough money in the bank now, they say it's not about the money anymore. But it was when they were 20 because they needed to get money behind them. And when they had kids, when they were younger, they needed to feed them.
So in terms of your book, Motivation is Pear-Shaped, let's talk about the P.
So P stands for purpose.
Yeah.
It's the understanding. When people give you all of those answers back, some of the answers, when you ask, why do you come here and do this stuff with us, will be related to, this is important, this matters, we change lives, we have a positive impact on the world. Maybe the world's a better place, people are better because of what we do. And there are some really obvious forms of sort of industries and professions where people are probably in it for the purpose. I don't think people go into nursing for the money.
Yeah.
They do it because it makes a difference. The same with teaching, I suspect. It doesn't pay that well. So people do it because they know it has a positive impact on the next generation. And so for lots of people, that understanding that what we do matters binds them. That's their primary driver. They want to make a difference. They want to contribute towards that. So P is for purpose. And when I think about the ideas behind Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, a lot of that was driven by purpose. What's our why? What's our reason for being? And that's absolutely fine. I don't argue with it, but I do think it's a bit one-dimensional. And whilst purpose is really important to a lot of people, there are lots in the world and in workforces who say, I couldn't give a damn, honestly.
And also the thing about purpose is, so I'm interviewing in a few weeks' time somebody who's a YouTube expert. They're also number 5 in the world for BMX bikes. And I said, so what is it? She said, I'll never win the gold medal. I'm not good enough because I don't have the time to put into the training. But she said, if I can get into the final, that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this isn't necessarily about, and you could see this, if I get into the final and there's a big grin on her face. So this isn't necessarily about winning a gold medal. It's about being the best of the best of yourself in that purpose, isn't it?
Yeah, and it absolutely can be. Yeah, and I've spoken to lots of business leaders about the why we do what we do, the purpose for this business, all that sort of stuff. And many of them have read Start With Why, and they're thinking along those lines. And a lot of them have said, we don't have a grand purpose. One business leader, they had a factory that made washers.
Yeah.
The little black rubber things that go into plumbing. And he's like, we just make washers. Now, you could argue that there is a grand purpose around stopping washing machines leaking all over people's kitchen floors and all that sort of stuff. But a lot of organizations say we just produce widgets, and that's all we do. And there isn't any. And even if I believed it, 99% of my people wouldn't, and they wouldn't buy into it. So purpose is important, but it's not everything. And that's why there are 3 other letters that follow.
I'll tell you what, let's take this question from Andrew before we move on to the E, which is, when an athlete reaches his or her peak and achieves their goals, how do you keep motivated when they stop competing?
And that's a really good question. I do differentiate goals from either our vision or our purpose or where we're trying to get to. I kind of describe goals as transitory. They're temporary, and therefore normally our what we actually want to achieve is more than just the goal. The goal is a milestone along the way, and the biggest challenge often for Olympians is the time straight after the Olympics. It's often known as the blues, and it's usually a bigger challenge if they've just won gold, because the goal has gone, and that was all that they had in front of them. They couldn't really see beyond it. It was like a brick wall, and they achieved it, and they got the other side, and there was a void. But if they really tap into why they were doing it, not just the goal, but what was the why behind the goal, then they realize that actually life doesn't stop just because I either won the gold medal or I didn't, or whatever. That actually it's part of something larger. And lots of Olympians, if you read pieces by, for example, Ian Thorpe, who was another very famous and very talented swimmer, he talks about, it's not about the gold medal anymore. It's about achieving the perfect swim, knowing that I never will achieve perfect. But that's what I'm going for now. It's that moment of thinking, wow, I don't know how I could have improved that. And that's what motivated him. But all athletes will retire. So even, one of their challenges is there's got to be something in life beyond that as well.
So the E of pear-shaped.
The E is for enjoyment. And the bit that most people relate to is that maybe the task needs to be fun for us to enjoy it. And I think, again, that's quite one-dimensional. Some tasks aren't that enjoyable in their own right, but there are other elements of working that might be enjoyable. Like, I like working with people. I like working with this team. We've got a great culture here. I like working with our customers and clients. Or even maybe I like the challenge. I've worked with lots of engineers over the years who say easy is boring. Don't give me the easy stuff. I want the really exciting stuff.
I want the challenge. I want
stimulating stuff. Yeah, and that's what they can get the enjoyment from. So enjoyment can come from all sorts of different angles, but fundamentally, lots of people need to enjoy their work.
I recently read World Class by Will Greenwood and Ben Fennell. And what comes out in that book is the fact that part of the reason why he played rugby was because, and I know, I live near Twickenham as well. There's this thing where it's about the team.
Yeah,
the team is paramount. And it didn't matter about whether you were picked or not. It's the fact that you did your best for the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, for many people, if you ask them, particularly why do you come here and do this stuff with us? Why do you come here? Because I love the environment that we've got. So enjoying our elements of our work, I think, is massive. And the more I talk to people, I find lots of people at the top end of organizations who might, maybe the founder of an organization was purpose driven, or maybe they're ambition driven because, they set out and they want to be the best. But a lot of people within the organization are E driven, enjoyment driven.
Yeah.
And the important thing with all of these, P, E, A, and R, if these become eroded and they're really important to people, those people will become demotivated very quickly.
So, A
is achievement and ambition. So it's the understanding that we're really good at this. Some of that comes because we might be hitting goals or targets and things like that. And some people are very goal target orientated. But this is the understanding that we're really good. We're good at what we do. I'm good at what I do. And we're improving. We can see the progress. We're getting better. We're learning. We're developing all the time. It's that understanding, that sense of satisfaction that you get from knowing that you are achieving and that you are good at this stuff. And if you've got ambitions to become number one, be the best, or the rest of it, it's the understanding that you are moving towards that. Not necessarily that you are number one right now, but it's that drive to get there that's the motivator.
And that's part, there's as you say, there's a number of reasons why you get up at a very early time in the morning to go swimming or whatever it is. And then part of it is to get better as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that, I think, drives a lot of athletes. Certainly. I think it drives a lot of people in sales environments who probably don't care particularly what they're selling. It's that thrill of the chase that some of them describe. It's that sense of achievement and satisfaction that you get from knowing that you've hit your goals, you're hitting your targets or surpassing them. That's what really drives them. And again, when you take that away, they'll become demotivated very quickly.
And so the R of PEAR then.
R is reward and recognition. It could be reward in the form of actual pounds, shillings, pence, dollars and cents type stuff. It could be commissions and bonuses and all that sort of stuff. Equally, it can be awards, and somebody gives you the trophy or employee of the month or whatever it is. But equally, it could just be recognition. And I say just, I don't mean just as in it's less than. I mean that it doesn't really cost us anything. It can be to say thank you. And I often reflect with leaders that there's a subtle but profound difference between saying thank you and thank you for. Thank you for always has more impact. And people tend to notice when people say thank you for ... and that what you did made a real impact. What you did made a difference. So yeah, that recognition is huge for people.
Yeah, I think certainly from a sales perspective, I think that a number of people are in sales because there's an ability to increase your earnings. But I think there's a lot of people also, they're looking for the recognition. They want to be, I mean, I've worked in sales teams when going into the sales meeting and knowing that you were top of the achievement league was probably as important as getting the money itself. Because it was that recognition amongst your peers, the fact that the people that you were working with, that you respected them, but you wanted to be the best.
Yeah.
And if you weren't the best, then you have the ambition to basically be the best.
Yeah. I think human beings are driven by the need to be recognized and respected as well as rewarded.
Yeah.
And, traditionally, people that pulled on an international shirt and represented their country didn't traditionally earn very much more, but there was still a real drive to pull on that shirt and be recognized as one of the best and be respected as one of the best. And through the conversation, you probably see that actually these four things are not unrelated. They are interdependent.
Yes.
There's a sort of a feed through across from passion and purpose through to enjoyment, through to achievement and ambition, through to reward and recognition. They're not different things, which also helps us to understand that we can build them together. We don't have to build these things independently. It's not about understanding how they work in isolation. It's about how they work in combination.
But if you have a zero in your equation, then if you're doing something and you don't get the enjoyment, then you may have a zero, and it may be we've done things that we've been good at things that we don't enjoy. But I mean, if you're going to be elite, then to get up and row at 5 o'clock in the morning on a cold River Thames, you got to pretty much enjoy it, haven't you?
Yeah, there's definitely got to be elements of it that you really do enjoy. You might not enjoy the pain of doing it. You might not enjoy the cold or the wet or anything like that, or the fact that it's dark, or the fact that your alarm went off at daft o'clock. But there's got to be some stuff in there that you really do enjoy. And understanding how we're motivated personally helps us to understand what's really important to us, and therefore that if somebody's really ambition driven and they're not getting that sense of achievement, they're likely to get demotivated very quickly. If they're recognition driven and they don't get the pats on the back and the recognition from others that they're seeking, they'll probably end up saying, oh, what's the point then? And so we can recognize that in ourselves. We can recognize it in others, when we're sort of coaching and leading others. And within our environment, we can also look around and say, have we got a shortage of any of these things? Because if we have, then there's a possibility we're going to lose some people motivationally here.
So just one final comment from Andrew says, if you don't get the enjoyment, it will not drive your passion.
Yeah, absolutely. And because they're all interrelated, if we start building one or two of these things, the likelihood is there's also a knock-on impact onto the others.
Simon, thank you so much for coming on today. Really loved your book. Motivation is Pear-Shaped. If I wanted to buy a copy, where would I go?
The online retailer that sounds like a rainforest.
Amazon would be the place. Yes,
that's the place to get them. Yeah.
And Simon, where can I find you?
So LinkedIn is the best place. So search for me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect up with anybody and start a conversation.
And you're very social as well, aren't you? Because I connected you on Facebook, and you're big on Facebook as well. So
yeah, and I've got an X, I think it's called now, not Twitter.
Yeah.
I've even got an Instagram. It's in its early stages. So yeah, come and find me.
But LinkedIn is the place to find you.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest. It's easiest to chat, I think.
Okay, Simon, thank you so much.